Hello and welcome to Varn Vlog. And today I was sitting doing a training and thinking about why we don't have a left that even has anything as a consistent grounds to critique itself. Why, in response to tailing progressives who are liberal and have an upper middle class value structure that really promote just a kind of nebulous equity based on people's identity categories, and yet are not interested at all in creating the kind of character traits that one would have, the kind of virtues that one would need, both collectively and individually, to be an effective political apparatus. Indeed, most of what I get is critique. Most of what I get is negative traits, negative feedback. And negative feedback has a lot of power, and we need to be honest about our reality. We need to be with reality, because if we just dig our hands in the sand because it is ideologically or personally convenient, and often for people they can't tell the difference between the two anymore anyway, then we don't have anything to build from. My pessimism comes from that. Comes from the Gramscian take of pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. But that phrase, which Gramsci didn't even invent, he just utilized, can be used for anything. Pessimism for what? Optimism for what? When I ask people about what's the problem of the left, they tell me we don't have power, we don't have money, we don't have whatever. And then I'm like, well, what do you even mean by left? What defines left? What commitments? What virtues? What subjects? Not just identity categories, not just nebulous interest groups, not just feeders or eaters. I always think about, in the critique of the Erfurt program, how Engels underlined that equal rights imply equal duties, and that an egalitarian society would have that. And I think about where the productivity is today and where duties are today. I think about how we do not hold anti-racists accountable for not solving black poverty. We hold them accountable for whether or not they change some cultural milieu or some law. We do not deal with the fact that the reason why most of us tail is because we don't have an autonomous identity, neither as a class, whatever the working class is, which we're vaguer and vaguer about, or as a political subject with political virtues and personal virtues and norms. The thing about economism has always been a removal of norms so that descriptions do the work for you. But the problem with that is they don't actually create anything. The idea that what you believe is inevitable because you've described it as the only outcome is a good way to feel like you can go to bed at night. It's a bad way to build an actual political subject. It's a bad way to build a character that can act and do and hold themselves accountable. And if you really think things are as serious as many of you say, if you really believe in these catastrophes, you're just waiting for the contradictions to heighten so that it automatically happens is irresponsible. But also, and conversely, it's mirror image, pretending that merely believing was all that we needed, that was more than just an element of our social technology. That too is false. That too is useless. My critique of David Graeber is he makes it sound like, and David Wingro together, and it's all we had to do is change the way we thought about things, not change the way we think about things and build a feedback loop with the world. This dichotomy of volunteerism and determinism, I think increasingly, and yes, I am out of step with the Marxist tradition for saying this, comes from a lack of cultivating positive virtues, from a fear of actually defining what we think it means to live a good life, both as an individual and collectively. And so, in that gap, what do? We pick the things that fit our temperaments and our backgrounds and pretend that that represents an entire class interest, or pretend that that is not aligning with some other interest in society. Whether it's celebrating or condemning some ginger country singer yelling into a mic, or talking about AOC's hypocrisy without talking about everything we did to enable it. And it is easy just to blame capture, or just to blame the left, or to critique the left. Most of the people who just critique the left counter signal themselves into their opposite, but don't even have the courage to admit their virtues have changed and their positions are different, and they do not actually believe what they once believed. That is cowardice. The left is more than just critique, because anything is more than just critique. Ruthless critique of everything existing, sure, but ruthless critique of everything existing for what, by whom, and how? What do you plan to instantiate with it, and what do you not? Otherwise, you'll just be whining about the general degradation of society when you yourself do nothing about it. It is not changing the world just to give certain unfortunate elements of the world dignity. Whether or not people should be shamed for things beyond their control, I think the answer to that is clearly no. But dignity is not what we're fighting for. And if it is, you don't have to change the world at all. You just have to change your attitudes to it. And perhaps where this is why the privileged discourse became what it became. But you have to make demands on people. You have to be willing to take criticism. Dialectics and dialogue do not mean everything is pleasant. And they also don't mean rolling over and just taking any criticism either. What do you believe other than the gut feelings that you get from the gaseous notions of other people's vague moralities that ends up supporting somebody more elite than you and you identifying with them as a substitute for your own life? I am tired of people telling me that the working class are noble because they are working class, because they are victims, because they are poor. That is not why they were ever noble. Sure, I would love to live in a society where there are no victims. Sure, we either all live in a just world or we don't. I'm not even sure justice has meaning, but if it is to have meaning, we have to define the cluster of virtues and values and norms of which justice might be applied fairly. Without that, it's usually merely revenge or social control. If you go about this purely to just critique, to just point out the flaws, that's fine. I'm a flaw point outer. That's what I'm good at. I look at systems, I see their weaknesses. I'm going to admit that this lecture is partly to myself. But there are other virtues than just seeing weaknesses. What do I see weaknesses for? What am I using them for? Am I using it to make the system stronger or weaker? It's a system worth making stronger and weaker. And how do I decide that? How do I decide what benefit is? Is it enabling people to continue as they are, no matter how bad it gets? Is it giving them something more? And if you're giving them something more, don't you have to ask something of them? Not just that, oh, you can't fix your systemic problems. And no, you can't do it alone. But also, we have to demand it of you. And yes, for people who come from backgrounds that are disadvantaged, they will fail more. That is a tragedy of life. We will support them, we will pull them up, but we will not lie to them about the situation. A lot of the resentment I think that has emerged about socialism comes primarily and almost uniformly from our refusal to define who we actually are, except as a counter tribe. And instead of fighting against that, most of us have doubled down on that and used that as an excuse. Use our personal pain and stupid institutions which abused us to do nothing but complain. Oh, we need better institutions. Well, how do you build them? We need more power. How do you do that? We need more money. How do you do that? How do you establish autonomous, meaningful values that are not just mirroring the politics that already exist? I keep on hearing from people, well, the Democrats and Republicans are the only game in town. Everything else is just a systemic call monitor or symbolic call monitor, or that's not really politics at all. How do you hold yourself beyond that? Because that is exhausting what you're doing. Why engage in this then? Why not just walk away? Just like the people who hide their values that are just liberals in the conventional sense, who want a laxer life, or just conservatives in the conventional sense, who want their world to stay the same. Whatever the consequences to other people, whatever the parasitism they must maintain in either case. For one of the things that one knows is one cannot live off of one's own labor alone in a society. But that also means, since you do live off the labor of others, that you owe it to them to contribute. And you owe it to them to figure out what you think a good life is. Now, there can be multiple answers to that question. There could be many correct answers. There is almost never one optimal solution to all situations. So there's never only one set of virtues. But there are things that in most cases would be unvirtuous. Perhaps they would even be vices. I have always called utilitarians cowards because utility was a way to hide their normative judgment, to avoid the question because they think that by making the question seem obvious and just a matter of pigs and shit, that it would be easy to do. Just like the question of determinism or contingency, it does not matter. If things are determined ultimately, so is your lack of belief in determinism. Nothing you could do would change that. So believing it would not help you, but you also don't have a choice. And if you don't believe in it, you also don't have a choice. So why talk about it? Well, you didn't have a choice. Then why have politics, etc., etc., etc.? This becomes a non-starter. Furthermore, just like one can fix privilege by making everyone degraded, one can be against something by being dead. A friend of mine kept on telling me, well, a corpse is anti-racist in so much it does not add race to the world. What does it mean to be pro-equality, pro-safety, pro-fairness, pro-freedom, pro-dignity? Not just merely dignifying, not just gilding the decayed lily as it is already rotted and long since started to smell. What does it mean? There's a Camus quote. Albert Camus is not Albert Camus, let me say his name the French way before people decide to get all their cultural capital up on me. Is not a thinker that I always love. Inconsistent liberalism is rife through his work. But there is something he used to say. Integrity has no need of rules, implying those who do not have integrity, who do not have wholeness, who do not know what they value and how they wish to enact it, will have things enacted upon them. This is a larger question than individualism or collectivism. I always tell people, I can lead you, but I can't make you do anything. I can discipline you, but I cannot give you self-discipline. I can encourage it. Just like the person who learns is the person who struggles, who makes mistakes, corrects the mistakes, and gets through. So we all, in both a purely negative view of the world and conversely, blowing smoke up people's ass about the past and the present, about whatever society you wish, well, neither one of them are really letting anyone learn, improve, or grow to develop the duties that they would have to get the rights. For many of you, this speech will sound quite conservative, even though what I am saying is what I think we need to do to change. The left is almost always discrediting because we don't even agree on what it means, what it is. A nebulous cluster of gaseous feelings, our moral sentiments in the whiffs of the air, fads running through graduate programs for formerly upwardly mobile people as they tumble downward into common labor. We're supposed to value common labor. And that's the one thing we can all do, even if we all can't do it the same way. Can everybody work in all ways? No. Should we have provisions for them? Yes, they can all contribute. But this idea that we're just going to rest on our laurels and get beyond work and positive cultivation of who we are and what we want, beyond just abstractions like general equity or general justice. What the fuck do you mean by justice? Do you think you can undo the past? You cannot. You can stop it from continuing into the future. But the past is, at least in our reality. It is material of which we have to build something and something better. But we have to have the virtues to define what better is. I've talked about class abolition for a long time. What do I mean by that? I mean power egalitarianism. I don't just mean general egalitarianism. We're not all equal, because that would imply we were the same. But also just having us all be represented in the different strata of society in equitable manner does not fix anything either. The assumption that because people look like you, that they have your interest, is a fool's assumption that racists have always used to keep all kinds of things from happening. When it calls itself justice, what do you think that is? I am tired of many of the debates. I'm tired of people complaining about the debates. Are you going to commit to a set of virtues, or are you going to be someone else's tool? Because as far as I see it, without defining what we think the norms are, we will pick up other people's norms and then use that as an excuse based off class, whether it's conservative or progressive or whatever. Those are not your norms, unless you are from the classes that instantiate them. Debates between Joe Biden and the Republican Congress matter to us all, and yet if we mistake that as who we are, well, what does it mean to be a leftist then? If to be a leftist is just to tail other people because we have no norms, no virtues, no even clear goals of our own other than to follow where the politics already are to just try to undo capitalism in some nebulous way, what have we done? What are we going to do? Now, I can't define all the virtues for you. I know what mine are. Cultivation, care for those who care for me, being willing to listen to those who oppose me, understanding, delayed gratification, and you will know what someone's virtues are, but what they do. And you will know if someone can live in alignment with their virtues, that they will be happier. They will find meaning in what they do. These sound like stupid self-help things, but we've ignored them for far too long. Why are so many leftists, whatever the fuck we mean by that, antisocial people? Well, marginal politics attracts the damaged first. That's always the case. They're the first people to be shut out of society. Are we to say, yes, that's true, that happened to you, and it sucks, but you can stay the way you are, even though society has damaged you? Or do we say, yes, that's true, I'm sorry that happened to you. Let's get better together, both individually and as a whole. We need more than just critique, more than just negation. Good day. Hit the bell, like, and subscribe.